The silence of deep space shattered as 7 massive shapes tore through the fabric of reality itself. The Vorthak Dominion fleet emerged from their hyperspace jump with mechanical precision, each vessel sliding into formation like pieces of a deadly puzzle. Their hulls gleamed with an oily black sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them appear as moving voids against the star field. Fleet Commander Zalthak settled into his command throne, the biomechanical interface cables sliding into ports along his spine with wet clicking sounds. His 4 eyes moved independently as he surveyed the tactical displays surrounding him. The Sol system stretched out before them, primitive and undefended, or so their intelligence reports claimed. "Scan initiated, Commander," reported Science Officer Veltar from her position at the sensor array. Her elongated fingers danced across controls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Initial readings show one anomaly in the outer system. Single vessel, human designation. Zalthek's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. The humans were exactly where their scouts had predicted. One lone ship patrolling the edges of their territory, probably filled with the same soft, fragile creatures that populated the rest of this backward system. "Magnify and analyze," he ordered, leaning forward with interest. "I want to know everything about their pathetic attempt at space warfare." The main display flickered and resolved into a clear image of the human warship. At first glance it looked unremarkable. Gray metal hull, conventional design, nothing that would threaten even their smallest patrol craft. But as Veltar's instruments began their deep scan, her expression changed from boredom to confusion. "Commander, these initial readings are unusual," she said, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that made Zalthak's attention sharpen. "The hull composition shows materials I do not recognize. The molecular structure appears to be layers of different metals fused together in ways that should not be possible." Zalthak studied the data streaming across his personal display. The human ship registered as being constructed from at least 12 different materials, some of which their databases could not identify. More troubling was the way these materials seemed to be integrated at the atomic level, creating a hull that should be impossible to manufacture. "Perhaps they have discovered some new alloy technique," he mused. "Continue the scan. I want power readings, weapon systems, crew complement. Everything." Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. Resilience, Captain Kim Hyun-woo stood at the center of his bridge with the calm confidence of a man who had faced death 100 times and walked away each time. His uniform was practical rather than decorative, bearing the scars and patches of someone who led from the front. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency at their stations. "Captain, we have company," announced Lieutenant Park So-young from the sensor station. Her voice carried the same professional calm as her captain, but with an undercurrent of anticipation. 7 vessels, configuration suggests Vorthak design. They are maintaining stealth fields and conducting what appears to be detailed scans of our position. Hyun-woo nodded slowly, his dark eyes never leaving the tactical display that showed the alien ships as ghostly outlines at the edge of sensor range. "How detailed are we talking about, Lieutenant?" "Deep molecular scans, sir. They are trying to analyze our hull composition, power systems, and internal structure. Very thorough work." So-young paused, then added with a slight smile, "Should I show them how thorough we can be?" From the weapons console, Commander Lee Jinho spoke up without looking away from his displays. "Already working on it, Captain. Their stealth technology is impressive by most standards. Unfortunately for them, we do not use most standards." Jinho's fingers moved across his controls with practiced ease. The Resilience's sensor array, which had been operating at barely 10% capacity, suddenly flared to full power. Advanced quantum scanners that made Vorthak technology look like children's toys swept across the alien fleet in seconds. The effect was immediate and devastating to Vorthak confidence. Their invisible ships suddenly appeared on human displays with crystal clarity. Not only were they detected, but the human sensors were providing detailed structural analysis, crew complements, weapon configurations, and even atmospheric composition of each vessel. "Impossible," breathed Veltar as her instruments registered the human sensor sweep. "Their detection capabilities are centuries beyond what our intelligence reported. Commander, they are scanning us in return, and their resolution is far superior to our own equipment." Zalthek felt a cold chill run through his exoskeleton as he watched his supposedly invisible fleet appear on what must be human displays. Each ship was not only detected but catalogued with disturbing precision. Their stealth fields, which had allowed them to observe and conquer dozens of species undetected, had been penetrated as easily as if they did not exist. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. Our stealth technology has never been detected by primitive species. I do not know, sir, Veltar replied, her voice tight with stress. But they are not only detecting us, they are analyzing us. Their sensor resolution is providing data on our internal systems that should be impossible to obtain even with direct physical access. The tactical situation had reversed itself in moments. The Vorthak fleet, which had approached as predators studying prey, suddenly found themselves as specimens under a microscope. The humans were not only aware of their presence but were examining them with technology that should not exist in this primitive system. Aboard the Resilience, the crew continued their work with calm professionalism. This was not their first encounter with alien technology, and they approached it with the methodical thoroughness that had allowed humanity to survive and thrive in a hostile galaxy. "Scans complete, Captain," reported So Young. 7 Vorthak vessels, heavy cruiser class. Standard configuration for deep space reconnaissance. They appear to be conducting intelligence gathering rather than preparing for immediate attack. Hyunwoo nodded thoughtfully. "Maintain observation protocols. Let them scan. Sometimes the most important intelligence comes from letting others show their hand first." The first contact between human and Vorthak forces had begun, though neither side had yet spoken a word. Veltar's 4 hands worked frantically across her control panel, each appendage operating a different scanning array as data flooded her screens. What she was seeing made no sense according to everything she had learned in her decades of studying alien technology. Her secondary arms, normally used for fine detail work, shook uncontrollably as she tried to process the impossible readings. The human warship's energy output was beyond anything in her experience. The primary reactor alone was generating power levels that should have melted the ship's hull from the inside out. No known material could contain that much raw energy without catastrophic failure. Yet somehow, the human vessel was not only containing it but seemed to be operating normally. "Commander Zalthek," she called out, her voice cracking with stress. "You need to see this immediately. These power readings are completely impossible." Zalthek's heavy footsteps echoed across the bridge deck as he moved to stand behind her station. His 4 eyes focused independently on different sections of her display, taking in the cascade of data that contradicted every law of physics he understood. "Explain what I am looking at, science officer," he commanded, though his voice carried less authority than usual. The readings were clearly disturbing him as much as they were his crew. Veltar pointed with one trembling finger at the energy signature analysis. "This primary reactor, sir. It is producing enough power to supply a small space station. The internal pressure and heat generated should have destroyed the ship within minutes of activation. But look here." She switched to a different display showing the ship's internal structure. "There are 18 additional reactor cores scattered throughout the vessel. Not backup systems, Commander. All of them are running at full capacity simultaneously. Each one is powerful enough to be the main reactor on any ship in our fleet." The silence on the bridge was absolute. Every crew member had stopped their work to stare at the impossible data. 19 fusion reactors, all running at maximum output, all somehow contained within a single hull that should have been vaporized by the first reactor alone. "That cannot be correct," Zalthek said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "Run the scans again. Check for interference or equipment malfunction." Veltar had already considered that possibility. She had run the scans 4 times, using different sensor arrays and frequencies. The results were identical each time. "Sir, I have verified the readings multiple times. There is no error. The humans have somehow managed to build what appears to be multiple complete starships inside a single outer hull." She brought up a cross-section view of the human vessel, highlighting different sections in various colors. Each colored section represents an independent operational unit. "Look at these power distribution networks. Every section has its own life support systems, its own propulsion units, its own defensive systems. If you removed any one section, it could operate as a separate spacecraft." The tactical implications were staggering. What they had assumed was one enemy ship was actually dozens of potential opponents sharing the same outer shell. Each section could theoretically detach and operate independently, turning a single vessel into an entire fleet in moments. Deep within the Resilience, Chief Engineer Han Min-soo walked through Engineering Section 7, one of the ship's 19 reactor compartments. The steady pulse of the fusion core provided a rhythmic heartbeat that he found comforting after 30 years of service. Around him, his engineering team worked with practiced efficiency, monitoring systems that would be considered miraculous by most alien species. The reactor room itself was a testament to human engineering philosophy. Everything was built to survive the worst possible circumstances. The fusion core was surrounded by 7 layers of protective shielding, each layer capable of containing a full reactor breach on its own. Backup systems had backup systems, and those had backups as well. "Chief," called out Engineer Park G1 from the power distribution console. "The aliens are really putting our reactors under the microscope. Their scanning intensity has increased by 300% in the last 10 minutes. Minsu nodded as he checked the readings on his personal display. The alien sensors were indeed working hard to understand their power systems. What they were seeing was probably giving them nightmares, and they had not even discovered the real secrets yet. "Let them look," he said calmly. "They are only seeing the standard operational reactors. The backup fusion cores are still hidden, and they have no idea about the antimatter systems." The engineering team shared knowing looks. What the aliens were scanning was impressive enough to terrify most species, but it represented less than half of the Resilience's actual power generation capability. The hidden reactors and the classified antimatter systems were kept offline during normal operations, invisible to all but the most advanced scanning techniques. "Chief Minsu to bridge," he said, activating the communication system. "Captain Hyunwoo, the aliens seem very interested in our power systems. Their scans are getting more detailed by the minute. Should I give them something more interesting to look at?" The captain's voice came back immediately, calm and controlled as always. "Negative, Chief. Let them think we are just overbuilt. No need to show off the real toys yet." Minsu smiled as he ended the communication. The captain was right, of course. There was no reason to reveal their true capabilities unless absolutely necessary. Let the aliens think that 19 fusion reactors was the limit of human engineering. They would learn the truth soon enough if they decided to make trouble. Meanwhile, on the Vortak flagship, Veltar continued to stare at her readings in growing horror. Each new scan revealed more impossible details about the human vessel. The power distribution networks were so complex that her computer was having difficulty mapping them all. The redundancy levels were beyond anything she had ever encountered. "Commander," she said quietly, "I believe we may have seriously underestimated these humans." Veltar's hands moved across her biological scanning equipment with increasing desperation. The readings she was getting from the human crew made no sense at all. She had checked her instruments 5 times, run full diagnostics on every system, and even borrowed scanning equipment from other stations. The results were always the same, and they terrified her. "Commander," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need you to see these biological scans immediately. Something is very wrong with what I am reading." Zalthek approached her station with growing concern. Veltar was one of their best science officers, trained at the most advanced academies in the galaxy. If something was disturbing her this much, it was worth serious attention. "What are you seeing, science officer?" he asked, settling his bulk next to her workstation. Veltar brought up the biological scan display with shaking hands. "Sir, the human crew readings are completely impossible. Look at these environmental conditions they are operating in." She pointed to different sections of the human ship highlighted in various colors. The red sections show radiation levels that would kill most known species in under 3 minutes. The yellow sections show atmospheric pressure that would crush our respiratory systems instantly. The display showed thermal images of human crew members walking casually through these deadly zones. They moved with normal speed and apparent comfort, showing no signs of distress or protective equipment. Some were even working on complex repairs in areas that registered as immediately lethal. "Perhaps their environmental suits are more advanced than we assumed," Zalthek suggested, though his voice lacked confidence. "No sir, that is what makes this so disturbing." Veltar switched to a detailed biometric display. These readings show they are not wearing any protective equipment at all. Their life signs indicate they are breathing the atmosphere directly, their skin is in contact with surfaces that should burn through any known material, and their bodies are absorbing radiation that would sterilize most planets. She pulled up individual crew member readings. Each human showed bone density levels that were impossible for any organic creature. Their muscle mass readings suggested bodies adapted to gravitational forces that would liquefy the Vortak within seconds. Most shocking of all, their brain activity patterns showed they were not just surviving these conditions but were completely comfortable in them. "Look at this crew member," Veltar said, highlighting one particular human on the display. "He is currently working in a section of their ship where our computers calculate the gravitational force at 12 times standard. The radiation levels would cook our bodies from the inside out. The atmospheric composition includes gases that are poisonous to 97% of known species. And according to our scans, he is humming while he works." Deep inside the Resilience, Lieutenant Commander Cho Young-jin moved through Section C7 with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his entire adult life in environments that would horrify most of the galaxy. The damaged radiation shielding from last month's training exercise was finally being repaired, though the work was taking longer than expected. The Geiger counter attached to his belt clicked steadily as he walked, measuring radiation levels that would send most species running for their lives. To Young-jin, the clicking was just background noise, no more concerning than the hum of the air recycling system. He had grown up hearing that sound, had been genetically modified before birth to thrive in conditions that others found deadly. Section Leader Cho called out Specialist Lee Hai-jin from where she was welding new shielding plates into place. The radiation spike in Corridor 7 is getting stronger. Should we evacuate the area? Young-jin checked his readings and shrugged. It is only reading 3 times normal background levels. We have worked in much worse conditions. Just make sure your exposure time is logged properly for the medical review. Around them, 36 other specialists continued their work without concern. They had all been selected and trained for this specific type of environment. Their bodies had been adapted over multiple generations to handle radiation, pressure, and atmospheric conditions that would be considered torture by galactic standards. The work they were doing would have required remote robots for most species. The humans were doing it with their bare hands, protected only by standard work gloves and basic safety equipment. What would have been a week-long project using robotic systems was being completed in hours by direct human labor. Environmental systems are running smooth, Captain, Young-jin reported through the communication system. Though we are showing some minor radiation leakage in Sector 12. Nothing that will bother anyone down here. His casual tone and dismissive attitude toward lethal radiation levels was typical of his crew. They had been bred for this work, trained from childhood to operate in conditions that would kill ordinary humans, let alone alien species. What they considered minor inconveniences would register as catastrophic environmental disasters to most of the galaxy. Back on the Vorthack flagship, the scanner operator who had been monitoring human communications suddenly stood up from his station and began making choking sounds. The casual mention of radiation leakage that would kill entire alien crews, delivered in the same tone someone might use to mention a minor temperature adjustment, had pushed him beyond his mental limits. Medical team to scanning station 3, Veltar called out as the operator collapsed. Another crew member needs sedation. This was the 4th scanner operator who had suffered mental breakdown while monitoring human communications. The casual way the humans discussed operating in deadly environments was proving too much for Vorthack psychology to handle. Commander, Veltar said quietly, I do not think these are ordinary creatures we are observing. Everything about their biology suggests they have adapted to survive in conditions that would destroy most worlds. They are not just tough or well-equipped. They have evolved specifically to thrive in environments we would classify as uninhabitable disaster zones. Zalthek stared at the biological readings, slowly realizing that humanity might be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Veltar's voice climbed to frequencies that hurt the ears of every crew member on the Vorthack bridge. Her scanning equipment had just finished analyzing the human warship's weapon systems, and what she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about military engineering. Commander Zalthek, she called out, her words coming so fast they almost blurred together. You must see these weapon readings immediately. This is not a military vessel. This is something much worse. Zalthek moved quickly to her station, his heavy footsteps echoing with urgency. The panic in Veltar's voice was unlike anything he had heard from her in 20 years of service together. When he saw the weapons analysis display, he understood why. The human ship was covered in what appeared to be standard equipment. Mining lasers for asteroid processing, navigation deflectors for clearing space debris, point defense turrets for protecting against small meteorites. All perfectly normal components that any civilian vessel might carry. But the power readings told a completely different story. Their mining lasers, Veltar said, pointing with a shaking finger at the display, are generating energy outputs of 47,000 terawatts per pulse. Our main battle cannon only produces 12,000 terawatts at maximum power. They have 6 of these mining lasers. The implications hit Zalthek like a physical blow. What the humans called mining equipment was nearly 4 times more powerful than the primary weapon on a Vorthack heavy cruiser. And they had multiple units. Perhaps they need such powerful equipment for mining especially hard asteroids, he suggested weakly, though he knew how ridiculous that sounded. Veltar switched to another display showing the ship's navigation systems. Their deflector array, sir. It is designed to push space debris out of their path during travel. The energy-focusing capability would allow it to function as a particle beam weapon with a range of over 2 million kilometers. The beam coherence is tight enough to cut through our heaviest armor plating. She continued scrolling through system after system. Every piece of equipment on the human ship served a dual purpose. The communication array could be reconfigured as an electronic warfare system capable of jamming or destroying enemy sensors from vast distances. The cargo loading systems doubled as magnetic railguns that could launch projectiles at relativistic speeds. But Commander, Veltar continued, her voice breaking with stress, this is the truly terrifying part. Look at these structural analysis readings. The display shifted to show the internal framework of the human vessel. What Zalthek saw made his blood turn cold. The ship was not built as a single unit. Instead, it was constructed as dozens of separate, independent modules connected by detachable linking systems. Each colored section represents a complete independent fighting unit, Veltar explained. They all have their own life support, their own power systems, their own weapons, and their own propulsion. The entire ship can separate into 43 individual combat vessels at will. Zalthek stared at the display in growing horror. What they had assumed was one enemy ship was actually a fleet of over 40 independent warships that had chosen to travel connected together. Each section was capable of operating alone, meaning that even if they managed to destroy 90% of the vessel, the remaining sections would continue fighting as separate entities. The modular design is not for repair efficiency or cargo flexibility, Veltar continued. It is a combat doctrine. They can separate during battle to present multiple targets, coordinate attacks from different vectors, or sacrifice damaged sections to protect the rest. We are not facing one ship, Commander. We are facing an entire battle group disguised as a single vessel. Aboard the Resilience, Weapons Officer Lee Jin-ho conducted his morning diagnostic routine with the calm professionalism that had kept him alive through 7 major conflicts. His station controlled enough destructive power to reduce planets to glowing slag, though most of that capability was carefully hidden from standard scans. The visible weapons systems were impressive enough. The mining lasers could punch holes through moon-sized asteroids with single shots. The navigation deflectors could focus energy beams across interplanetary distances with surgical precision. The point defense grid could track and destroy thousands of incoming projectiles simultaneously. But those were just the systems that appeared on official blueprints. Hidden throughout the ship were weapons that existed only in classified files. Antimatter torpedoes disguised as waste disposal systems. Gravitational manipulation devices masquerading as artificial gravity generators. Reality warping experimental weapons that most species would consider impossible. All systems showing green across the board, Captain, Jin-ho reported to the bridge. Though our alien observers seem very interested in our equipment loadout. Their scanning intensity has increased dramatically in the past hour. Captain Hyunwoo's voice came back immediately, carrying his usual calm authority. What do you think they are discovering about us, Commander Lee? Jin-ho allowed himself a small smile as he looked at his weapon status displays. Probably enough to give them nightmares, sir. They are seeing our standard operational systems and thinking those represent our full capability. They have no idea about the classified equipment. The captain's response carried a note of dark amusement. I think they are already terrified just from what they can see. No need to show them the really dangerous toys unless they force our hand. Jin-ho nodded as he continued his diagnostics. The aliens had no way of knowing that what they were scanning represented less than 30% of the Resilience's actual combat capability. The real weapons, the ones that could crack planets or stop time itself, remained safely hidden in their concealed base. On the Vorthak flagship, another scanner operator had just been carried away for emergency medical treatment after discovering that the human garbage disposal system could function as a planet-killer weapon. The revelation that humanity weaponized even their trash management systems had pushed him beyond psychological breakdown. Commander Zalthek made a decision that would save his fleet and his species. It was time to leave, quickly and quietly, before the humans decided to demonstrate their capabilities. The Vorthak War computer processed the final streams of data with mechanical precision, its quantum processors working through terabytes of information gathered from their extensive scans of the human vessel. Commander Zalthek watched the analysis progress bar crawl toward completion, dreading what conclusions the advanced artificial intelligence would reach. When the analysis finished, the computer's voice filled the bridge with flat, emotionless tones that somehow made its words even more chilling. Analysis complete. Classification of human vessel resilience has been updated based on comprehensive scan data. Zalthek leaned forward in his command chair, his 4 eyes focused intently on the main display. Proceed with summary. The human vessel designated Resilience is not constructed for conquest, exploration, or territorial expansion. Design philosophy analysis indicates primary purpose is species survival against extinction-level threats. All redundant systems, environmental adaptations, and weapon configurations suggest a species that has faced and survived multiple catastrophic events that would have eliminated most known civilizations. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Every crew member had stopped their work to listen to the computer's analysis. The implications of what they were hearing sent cold fear through their bodies. The computer continued its report without pause. Structural analysis suggests human engineering philosophy is based on assumption of total systemic failure. Every component has multiple backups. Every system is designed to function independently. The vessel can lose 85% of its mass and continue full military operations. This level of redundancy is only seen in species that have experienced repeated near-extinction events. Veltar's hands trembled as she stared at her own scan data, seeing it now in a completely different light. What she had interpreted as overbuilding and inefficiency was actually the engineering signature of a species that had learned to prepare for the absolute worst possible scenarios. Environmental adaptation analysis indicates crew has been genetically modified to survive in conditions that would be classified as apocalyptic by galactic standards. Radiation tolerance, pressure adaptation, and atmospheric flexibility suggest preparation for planetary destruction scenarios. The human crew is biologically designed to survive the collapse of civilized space. The computer's next words sent Zalthek's mind reeling. Weapon system analysis reveals defensive rather than offensive doctrine. All systems serve dual civilian and military purposes. This configuration is typical of species that have learned to survive by making every tool a weapon when necessary. Humans have weaponized their entire technological base because they have been forced to fight with whatever was available. The tactical display showed the human ship in a new light. What had appeared to be a warship was actually a mobile survival shelter, designed to keep humanity alive when everything else failed. The massive redundancy, the environmental adaptations, the hidden weapon systems, all of it pointed to a species that had learned to prepare for the complete destruction of everything they held dear. Final conclusion, the computer announced. Humans are not a conquering species. They are a survivor species. They do not seek to dominate others. They seek to ensure they cannot be eliminated by others. Recommendation: extreme caution. Species that have survived multiple extinction events typically possess capabilities far beyond standard threat assessment protocols. As if summoned by the computer's ominous conclusions, the main display suddenly flickered to life with an incoming transmission. Captain Kim Hyun-woo's face appeared on the screen, his expression calm and professional. Behind him, the bridge of the Resilience showed humans working at their stations with quiet efficiency. Unknown vessels, Captain Hyun-woo said, his voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. This is Captain Kim Hyun-woo of the United Earth ship Resilience. You are currently in human-controlled space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The words were polite and diplomatic, following standard first contact protocols. But Zalthek heard something else beneath the professional courtesy. This was not the nervous greeting of a primitive species encountering superior technology. This was the patient inquiry of someone who had dealt with threats before and was calmly assessing whether these new visitors represented another one. Captain Hyun-woo waited for a response with the same calm expression he might use while ordering tea. There was no fear in his eyes, no tension in his posture. He looked like someone who had faced down extinction itself and walked away from the experience. "Sir," Veltar whispered, her voice barely audible. "What are your orders? How do we respond?" Zalthek stared at the human captain's face on the screen. Behind those calm eyes, he sensed something that made every instinct in his body scream danger. This was not prey. This was what prey became when it refused to die, when it adapted and evolved and fought back against everything the universe threw at it. "Navigation," he said quietly, never taking his eyes off the human captain. "Plot emergency jump coordinates. Full retreat, maximum acceleration." "Sir?" his navigation officer asked in confusion. "Communications," Zalthek continued, "send priority alert to High Command immediately. Classification, Apex threat level. Message reads, avoid human space at all costs. They are not prey. They are what happens when prey refuses to die. Species has survived multiple extinction events. Capabilities unknown but extensive. Recommend complete avoidance protocols." The Vorthack fleet began its emergency jump procedures, their ships disappearing one by one into hyperspace. As the last vessel vanished, Captain Hyunwoo turned to his bridge crew with a slight smile. "Well, that was interesting," he said calmly. "Lieutenant Park So-young, make a note in the ship's log. First contact with Vorthak species. They appeared curious about our systems but maintained peaceful distance. Filed under, scared them off without firing a shot." The bridge crew of the Resilience returned to their normal duties, completely unaware that they had just redefined humanity's reputation across 3 galactic sectors and possibly prevented a war that could have consumed entire star systems.